All right, again, welcome back to Adventure's Edge. This is DM Don, and we're rapid fire covering elements of the system of how to play Adventure's Edge. So we've covered some how to do the attacks and how to do a crit. I want to go ahead and hit how to cast spells. So this is we covered spell attacks, but what if you're not doing an attack spell, or maybe you are, but there's plenty of spells that are not attacks. The thing with spells is that whether or not you're targeting someone in a hostile manner, every time you cast a spell, you are making a spell attack. That's just the way it is. And the way you do this is that every spell, if you don't have a target, has a difficulty level. And that level is 5 plus the level of the spell, which probably doesn't sound like a lot, right? So if I want to cast a first level spell, it's going to be difficulty 6, 5 plus 1. If I want to cast a 5th level spell, it's difficulty 10. That's 5 plus 5. Pretty easy. So your typical magician is going to probably start out right with a plus 5 or plus 6 spell attack. You would think, well, then they're never going to fail. And that is the idea, but the world is not a perfect place. So where these chances of failure come into is that you might get penalties. Maybe your magician put on some armor. Maybe your magician's cumbered. Maybe you're fatigued. There's a number of ways you can start stacking on penalties that suddenly make that surefire success not so surefire. So that's where those things come into. So if you are at negative edge, for example, maybe there's just an extraneous condition that has put you at minus 1 edge to all activities. Well, now, if you're that spellcaster and you're making a roll, even if you don't have any other penalties, and you're thinking, well, I still only need, maybe I'm just casting a first level spell. It's still only DL6. That means I still theoretically can't fail on 2 dice, right? Because even if I rolled a 1, that is still going to exceed the difficulty level. And that is true in most cases. So a 1 does not guarantee failure. And this is true across the system. You have to fail to get a critical failure, which I'm calling a mishap, by 5 or more. So maybe you're casting a 3rd level spell, which is now going to be DL8. Even then you're like, well, I'm at minus 1 edge, but I have a plus 7. I still can never fail. And the way a failure could trigger is if you are at minus edge on something. Again, this is true across the system. And you roll 2 1s. Anytime you roll 2 1s, regardless of the difficulty, that is a mishap. And then there is a mishap chart that comes into play. And it is on the last page. So the system is not overly penalizing, I don't think. But chances of failure exist, and that's actually where you need to keep account of your various situational modifiers. The other really common way for magicians to lose edge has to do if they don't have one of their 2 required components. Is every spell has 2 required components. One is a verbal component, which is something you are saying out loud to command the magics. And the second is your physical component or your focus item. Now, magicians basically have one of 3 types of focus items. Some magic users can use an amulet, and you'll see those with the priests. Some can use a wand, and some can use a staff. The focus item itself is not specifically important, right? As long as you have your focus item, that's great. But if you lose one of those 2, like if you get maybe somebody's put you in a wall of silence and you can't speak, now if you're missing one, you're at minus 1 edge to cast. So now the chances of failure get a little bit more real. If you are missing both of your focus items, so you've been disarmed and you've been muffled, you simply cannot cast. You're unable to command the magics. And that's how you can neutralize spellcasters. So you take away their focus item and you prevent them from being able to talk. That's it. So let's go real quick down to the back page here. Scrolling way down. All right, so in this case, actually now that I think about it, Braun actually starts out with a spell. And I just wanted to kind of mention these, right, because he has a low magic spell. And I have talked about low magic and high magic. Low magic spells are available to everybody. High magic spells are only available to magic users. Now, this is where thinking about low magic spells, I'm not sharing the screen. Right, so Braun has a low magic spell called Ignite, which allows him to basically start a campfire. He can point at a piece of combustible material, and a small burst of flame appears and ignites it. It's not an attack spell, but for him to use his Ignite spell, even though it's a low magic still effectively counts as a first level spell. So the DL for Braun to cast his Ignite is still DL 6. Now, we already know Braun only has a +2. Now, we're talking about an armsman here, so obviously he's not a magician. So even with one die, this is still not a guarantee, right? Because he still needs to get at least a 2 on the die. He needs to get at least a 4 on the die to get a 6. So Braun actually has a much higher chance of just failing his little Ignite spell. Now, it's still not going to be a critical failure, though, unless it is 5 or more. So if he just tries to cast it, in general, nothing is going to happen. So he's not going to constantly get dinged with mishaps for casting a spell. But if, for whatever reason, Braun is, either at negative penalties, maybe he's been in a fight and he's at -3 or whatever, and then I roll that 1, and then suddenly my total roll is after modifiers, it becomes down to a 1. Well, now he's failed by 5, and then now that would trigger a mishap. So again, it's not super penalizing, but because these things, it can happen. So basically on your equipment table, you have just a couple small charts here, and one of them is your spellcasting mishap. So if you do trigger a mishap, then you have to roll a d20 and see what happened. I rolled a 7, botch spell, the spell fails, produces a loud bang, and he loses the magic point. So that's pretty much it for casting spells. So that you can see there are a variety of things that can happen. We actually didn't cover attack mishaps. They do kind of work the same. If you roll a 1 and you miss by 5 or more, then that triggers an attack mishap. And then you would go over here and roll on that table. So that covers how to cast spells. I guess on to the next topic. Thanks.